So, I have always admired roses and other classical cottage perennials, but for some reason, there was something about them that I kind of scoffed at for a while. I don't know, maybe it was too cliche for, like a ranch wife's lifestyle. But I am slowly coming back to roses because I was always familiar with the wild ones and then the feral, like 120-year-old, 200-year-old rose bushes on old homesteads on the islands in Alaska, because there used to be quite a lot of homesteads around the turn of the century and last century, especially around Sitka and Juneau and Port Conclusion. Port Alexander used to be a boomtown in the 30s, so sometimes you would find in the middle of the woods just a random overgrown clearing with thousands and thousands of daffodil bulbs and an old gnarled lilac tree and an old beautiful stately, like 10 feet tall sometimes, heritage rose, like the double blooms, the old tea roses that used to be really popular. Excuse me. That actually is my rose that you're drinking out of. I'm not sure that you're supposed to be drinking that. It did say that it was organic, but that's yucky. You guys, I just filled up your water, dude. Go drink out of your own water, please. I appreciate the help. Anyway, Grocery Outlet had these little, quit. They call them miniature roses. I've heard them called tea roses. They're, the older style, fancier ones, not much of a smell. The old island varieties were varieties that people bred, and passed down their generations of plants to each other. And so they had the beautiful, the double blooms and like all different colors, but they smelled a lot better. And commercially grown roses nowadays have been pushed so far to select for color and patterns that the smell has kind of been, bred out pretty much. They have a nicer smell than, say, a cutting rose, but anyway, what I'm doing before I get off track, Grocery Outlet had tea roses for $4 each, and what they'll do is they'll root out 3 or 4 or 5 little cuttings and put them in the same pot, and that will give you a fuller look in the store. That usually doesn't quite last as long if you don't know what you're doing, but sometimes you can get, a few plants for $4, and that's quite the deal. I have a purple one that I got the other day, and I didn't bother to separate that one just because I didn't have the time, but I'm going to go ahead and separate this one because they're very beautiful, and they're kind of like classic Valentine's roses. And what you want to do, if you're separating any shrub, any vegetable start, especially sensitive ones, the best thing to do is not to try to tear them apart with your hands. The best thing to do is to gently kind of wash the roots in water, and the soil will, as long as it's not terribly root bound, and even then, I've had much better success with my seedlings that way. Even things that generally don't transplant well, like lilacs and cucumbers and beans, if you take the patience to gently tease them apart in the water and let the water do most of the work, you tend to end up with better results. And as you can see, I just broke off a feeder root, but that's one feeder root out of quite a few, instead of trying to separate them out without watering and without doing this, in which case you might lose half of that. And you want all the little white feeder roots that you can get. So there's one plant, and there's 3 here that I can comfortably separate. So that one looks really good. And this one doesn't look as great, but it's still it has quite a nice root system. And that will do well. And there. Cost me $4, a pot of water, and a little bit of time. And now I'm going to have 3 beautiful rose bushes that will last for a while. And and do really well, as opposed to one kind of stunted, you know, shabby looking thing that won't last very long. And, you know, now that I think of it, these will be fine because they're roses. So I'm going to go ahead and get that other purple rose that I planted a few days ago. And we'll see how the roots are doing, and we'll do the same thing. So it's just right here. It hasn't established quite well, but that's an encouraging sign. As you can see, these white roots were not here when I planted this guy a week ago. There is an aphid though, that won't do. That is a good thing I caught that. The cabbage aphids are coming out, and they are one of the banes of my existence. For some reason, they really like it on this farm, and people around us don't tend to have as many problems with them. I'm not sure what it is about this place that the green aphids really like, but at least I caught it, and I can make sure I'm watching for an outbreak. So we're just going to do the same thing with this one. I think there's actually 4 potentially healthy plants in here. So the same as the other one, you know, I'll go get the hose actually. It's still running, so. Puppy. So the cicada seed guys are here. They lease a couple acres right by the house, and they grow different kinds of vegetables and breed spinaches and stuff. That's why the dogs are making a big fuss. Okay, we get it. Thank you. Good pups. Be quiet now. I get it. They're okay. They're fine. Good girl. They're okay. They're fine. Good girl. Good job, bud. 'Tis beginning to be the season where at least once a day, and sometimes multiple times a day, the dogs will be standing right at the side of the fence closest to the fields and barking for about a half hour at a time if I can't get to them. Tom! I heard you! Be quiet or go inside. Gotta be sparing with the mom voice, you know. It works best when used in little sprinkles. So these little bushes don't have flowers on them because they looked a little shabby when I first got them, and I know sometimes the best thing to do for a little bit of a you know, not as vital seedling is to take all the flowers or fruits off of it. And if there's any blossoms, you trim the buds and the blossoms off until it gets a little more established. It's not strictly necessary, but it does make a big difference, especially in the first season. And then they establish a lot quicker and a lot more comfortably. Yeah, you can. It generally doesn't happen that way with roses, but you can kind of stunt a plant's growth pretty permanently if you don't give it a good prune and a trim, and trim out all the fruiting bodies before you plant it. So this one is taking a little longer because it's like I said, it was a little more root bound when I got it. And I could stand to be a little more picky about the store plants, but I've been at it for so long that, you know, I kind of have it figured out. I can kind of give seedlings a good shot even if they are not doing well. But this one's a little bit of a tricky one, so I might have to use a little bit more force with this. I wouldn't want to. So this looks like I'm pulling, and I am pulling, but I'm pulling extremely slowly and gently. Like, you don't want to do big jerks. You don't want to pull one plant out all at the same time. This one's a little more tangled. You want to kind of slowly find the middle of the root ball and gently tease it apart. Nice steady pulls, no sudden moves. And once you get, you know, a few roots more separated, you kind of like jiggle it, bob it around, slow and steady. And like I said, that's not imperative for a rose, because the rose family is pretty vital and determined. But I try to follow the same protocol of care with all of the seedlings that I plant, just as a matter of practice and principle. So, oh, before I get sucked in too much further, I need to go stir the lard I have in the breezeway. 1 second. Oops. Any hoodle. In the past, I have done lard in the crock pot, which is a little less high maintenance than the brazier pan, but we have so much quantity, it became apparent this winter that we probably should have bought a bigger lard pot a while ago. And the brazier pot that I got, it's a 25 quart brazier pot. I got it at Chef Supply. Carl kind of got it for a present for me, as it was only 90 bucks. It works well and it retains heat pretty well, but it's also a little more finicky. You have to stir it a lot, maybe every 5 minutes or so. And you have to try to keep the gas down as low as possible. Just because lard is really delicate, and if you're not doing it in a slow cooker, then the risk of burning it is quite high. And if it's browned a little bit, it won't ruin the batch, but it will ruin it for delicate applications like pastry, and bread, which would be a little unfortunate. It would suck to have, 30 pounds of frying lard that we don't need. It doesn't ruin it if it gets browned. It tastes a little more porky, and I've found that, people don't, it doesn't suit most people's palate, and it doesn't suit my palate when I'm trying to do something that is supposed to be, pretty delicate. Nobody wants a porky pie crust. Anyway, it'll all get used. It's just, something to be mindful of when you're trying to put away quite a lot of things. You don't want to be careless and ruin a batch and turn it into like a lower grade product. So, anyway, this one just is a little more reluctant to come apart. Trying to be as gentle as I can, especially since it already spent a week in the ground. But like I said, it will be fine. It will be just fine. And there you have it. So there's that. And I'm gonna just trim them up and probably pot them up today and give them some root toner. It's not technically organic, but I don't mind it for, perennials and shrubs. It does tend to give things a good boost, just for the very beginning. And then I switch over to organic fertilizers, but it's kind of hard to find a good purpose organic fertilizer that doesn't have too much nitrogen for a young plant. The root toner will give them, more calcium and phosphorus and magnesium, and that's what they really need at this stage. Too much nitrogen will shock any plant. So yeah, but with a rose, that takes 2 months to get established, especially when they're little like this, and especially when they've been handled properly. And yeah, like I said, roses are tenacious, but these little grocery store varieties can be a little more finicky, just because they haven't been bred for vigor. They've been bred for short-lived beauty. Yeah, let's see if I have my snippers here. Okay, yeah. Oh dear, those aren't the right ones. I forgot I still had my dog clippers in there. My dog's nail clippers. Okay, so I'll just give you a few, like a good crash course, I guess. So, I don't know if you can see this. It's kind of hard to get it in focus, but I don't really like this right here, this doubling. So I'm going to go ahead and snip both of those off. And I don't really like this dieback right here at the tip, but again, it won't hurt the plant very much, and it will eventually seal itself off. But we'll just get rid of some of these leaves. this cutting of part of the leaf will stop, you know, some transference of fluid. And that tends to make them a little happier while they get established. Especially since I'm having to do it on a hotter day than I like. The best time I've found to plant starts is the evening of a rainy day. Well, any time during a rainy day, but you know. So let me think about this. This tall one right here is the healthiest shoot. So I'm going to use my best judgment with this one. And some people might disagree with how I'm doing this, which is fine. But I'm going to take all of that away. You do want to leave a little bit of stem above every joint that you find, because they will like abort that channel of nutrients, and there'll be a little more dieback. So if you can give it time to, or if you can give it room above a nodule, that's the best practice. And this one's interesting because I don't know if you can see that, but this short branch has a little nodule coming out of it. So I'll snip that right there. Snip those, snip that one, snip these back. And you know what? No, I'm going to take that whole nodule off anyway. Yeah. And just do the little snips. This is another reason why I would recommend personally getting smaller starts. They do take a little while longer to establish, but they tend to, you know, they tend to transplant a little better. They don't go into quite as much shock. Okay, so this one's kind of interesting. This one is the variegated red and pink. I kind of hate to snip it, but I'm going to anyway, just because of, you know, the reasons stated above. So, you know, I used to be a little more timid with taking flowers off because I couldn't bear the thought of, you know, missing any of the beauty of the plant. But I have learned as I've gotten older and more experienced that sometimes being ruthless at the first is much better. And honestly, most of the time it is better. So I won't take too terribly much off of that, but I will just kind of like snip it up, make sure the evaporation is a little bit less than it could be. There we go. You know, that was a simple one. Let's see. This guy needs a little bit of love. This one actually is pretty good. I don't know why the screen keeps darkening. Maybe I'm just moving my head a little bit. This one's fine. I could leave it alone. Yeah, that one's fine. I'll leave that one alone. This one, and you know, this is pretty, but you know, like I said, you want to to give the plant the best shot, you really have to be pretty ruthless. It's just better for everything in the long run. So I don't like the kind of crowdedness of this, so I'm going to take quite a bit off. And if you have a different way of doing it, I would be more than happy to listen to it. But this is just how I'm going to do it and how I like to approach things. So if we left this nodule right here, there would be a sprout growing here. But I like this one better because it kind of balances out the other side a little better. So snip that one and snip these inner leaves. We want good root, we want good airflow. I'm going to do a good snip and snip the leaves. There we go. And boom, perfect. And now we have a beautiful little, you know, a little bud for a bud vase. I'll throw those back in the water just so they last a little longer. Okay, last one. Then I will go check on the lard again because it probably needs to be stirred, and maybe pot these up. Last pointer before I go. When you take buds, cut the stem off straight and put them right in the water, and make sure you take all the leaves off. And they'll last a little longer that way. Roses are pretty long-lived in a vase anyway, but you give them a little extra help, they'll last quite a bit longer. Especially these pretty little roses, I hate to waste them. I won't get roses until later this summer, or blooms, I should say. Anyway, that looks like it's been cleaned up a little bit. It's fairly sufficient. Yep, get these, right there. And this guy, that's kind of a tough one. This is where I struggle a little bit. Like, I've gotten a lot better at being ruthless, but I hate to, take all of the plant's glory. So I'll snip right here and right here, and I will snip this whole thing off. But I will leave a couple of shoots just because I want to. But this other one, I don't like that at all. Because as you can see, this healthy sprout is growing right into the middle of the plant. So, gasps of horror from the audience. So, and there you have it. And just gotta get these in some water and then go check on my lard again. And I may or may not show you how I plant it, but the planting is so easy. So just wanted to chat a little bit and show everyone how I did that. And there you go. I have 7 beautiful little rose bushes for a combined price of $8. And if you went and got these nice tea roses from a nursery, it would probably cost you like $15-20 a plant. So yeah. And if I really wanted to, be frugal, I could take these and root them out, because you don't need anything for roses except, some dirt. Don't even need rooting toner, but I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how much time I have and what I feel like doing today. I'm kind of just puttering around, enjoying myself. Charlie and Carl are off in the woods, so all right. That's how it's done.